So I was in a class. Gosh, I've been in the class the last 3 days. One, two, three. Classes. But we love classes. We like for you to take classes. So if you need a class, check us out at appraiser.elearning.com. We've got a bunch of classes coming around, and we've got some new classes coming up as well. But I was in a class, and we were having a conversation. And somebody said, "What about solar panels?" I said, "What about them?" Because I really don't know a lot about solar panels. I do know my brother just had some solar panels installed, and had lunch with him today, late lunch, and he said, "Yeah, OMU, that's our municipality." He said, "They've been calling, wanting to come show some people some of the stuff." And he claims that eventually his electrical meter may end up running backwards, where the electric company may pay him money. I don't know. I don't know anything about it, but I have someone with me today that does know something about solar panels. So come on back and join the conversation. Hi, this is Bryan Reynolds. You're listening to the Appraisal Update Podcast, brought to you as always by the great folks over at Appraiser eLearning. I am super excited. I got my good friend, Mr. Mark Buhler. He is an appraiser in Southern California. Mark, hi. Welcome to the program.
Hi, Bryan. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. So you're kind of the solar guy, maybe the green guy, everything all rolled up into one. I don't know. Mark, before we jump into talking about solar and green and all the things that you're an expert in, why don't you let my viewers and listeners know a little bit about Mark Buhler?
All right. Yes, I'm Mark Buhler. I'm a residential real estate appraiser in Southern California. I started doing appraisals back in 1987 on a typewriter. In a microfiche machine, and I've made it through the ups and downs of the last 35 years, and here we are to tell about it.
Yeah, you talk about ups and downs, and boy, a lot of appraisers out there would say they're kind of in a down mode right now. You know, I taught a class today about diversifying your practice and learning new technology and new trades, if you will, within our profession and also outside of our profession. And so you certainly have a specialty. You're in California, so you guys have a lot of solar stuff out there, right? So talk to me a little bit about solar panels. Let's talk about it specifically on a residential property, on a residential house. What is the benefit to having solar? What's the cost associated with solar? Is there a contributory value, and how we figure all those things out?
Well, here in California, it definitely has become a popular item that folks are adding up to their rooftops primarily. Out on rural properties, we might see them on the site, not placed on top of the roof. And the benefit here is primarily a fiscal benefit because of the fact that the utility prices in California are extremely high, among the highest in the nation. So solar is fairly static, the cost across the nation, but where the return on investment starts to seem a little bit better is in areas where you've got high cost energy, such as California, Hawaii, Massachusetts, other places where the kilowatt hours are not as expensive, Louisiana, Florida maybe. It takes a little bit longer to get back the money that you invest in solar. So it's definitely become a sore spot for everybody involved in the transaction for years here. And what I'm seeing now is it's starting to branch out into areas that in the past would say, oh, solar, whatever, that's a West Coast thing, or, that's California thing. Well, now I'm seeing the number two installations, the second largest amount of installations of solar by megawatts is the state of Texas, which in the past was, no, we don't use that. We have plenty of oil over here. We're good. But Texas has adopted it along the East Coast, New Jersey, New York, places that I never thought would be interested in learning about it are now reaching out to me.
Wow. That's incredible. So in your experience, when you see a house, you mentioned on the rooftop, Are these systems leased or are they owned or both?
Well, I see both, and what's important to understand for both realtors and real estate appraisers is the Fannie Mae rules around that, the guidelines. If the system is not owned outright by the homeowner, for a realtor, it causes a marketability issue where they not only have to sell a home, they also have to sell the whatever obligation that the homeowner has on the solar. And for um, the appraiser is off the hook if it's leased. So most appraisers know that much about solar. The first question they would ask when they see solar on somebody's roof is to say, do you own it or lease it? And when the homeowner says we lease it, most appraisers would breathe a big sigh of relief and think,
Yeah.
okay, good.
Thank God. Thank God. Yeah.
But there's some other different ways of having solar on your roof that I train and teach people about, and Fannie Mae guidelines have specific rules about when we are to consider giving contributory value,
Okay.
and
Okay.
that's pretty much when it's owned.
When you own the system. Okay. So let me ask you this: when we have a discussion about whether the equipment is leased or whether the equipment is owned, clearly if you have the ability to interview the owner, I mean you can ask them. If you're doing an inspection, you can ask them in person. But what do you do in those scenarios where maybe you get an an assignment, and it's for a drive-by? It's a drive-by appraisal, or it's even what's becoming more and more popular are the desktop appraisals. So we're not gonna go to the property, and maybe it's a scenario where I on drive-bys and desktops I can still call the owner in most instances. But what if you had a client that said, hey, do not contact the owner because this is a potential foreclosure or something, and so we want no contact with the owner. Appraise this property. You get to doing your research. You pull up an aerial. You look at it and like, oh no, there's solar panels. Is there some other way to ascertain whether or not those are owned or leased?
That is a great question, and that has been a problem in the past. And I think it was about a year and a half ago where Fannie Mae put out some advice, and they put down some guidance on this. And in a nutshell, what it said was that the lender is responsible to provide the appraiser with the information.
Okay.
So any appraiser that has problems with even the homeowner of the subject property, you might walk in there and say, do you own it or lease it? And they might not even know. They might be confused. And so I would suggest to appraisers to follow that question up when you say, do you own it or lease it? And they say, we own it. Ask them how much they paid for it. And if they say we didn't pay anything for it, they probably don't own it. And if they have a monthly payment on it, they've gotten themselves into some type of a financial arrangement that might be a lease or a power purchase agreement. But ultimately, when we run into difficulty getting the data based on the Fannie Mae selling guide now and the guidelines that they put down. Now, keep in mind that book is for lenders and appraisers. So they're telling lenders in there, it's your responsibility to provide the appraiser with the information.
Okay.
And in a case where somebody didn't want to share it, one way to sort of incentivize them to share it is to say, if I can take a look at your documentation, the key documents that we want to see here are the installation agreement, and if there is a finance agreement, we want to see both of those documents. And at that point, we can go through and it will give us the specifications of the system, and the finance agreement will give us how exactly did they get into this agreement and what did they agree to. If they won't give that up, you can incentivize them by saying, if you actually own it and you own it outright, I can give you contributory value and add value to your home. If not, I have to assume that you don't own it, and I won't give contributory value.
Right. Right. Hey, before we go any further, let's just break this down a little bit, and because I have to admit I'm completely ignorant when it comes to these systems, right? I mean, I've got a deer camera, a camera to take deer pictures out in the woods in the middle of nowhere, and it's a singular device, and it will send pictures to my phone. And dang, I get tired of going out there and changing the batteries all the time. So I bought one of these little solar panel jobbies and plugged it in and had it up there, and it worked until my big battery ran out. And I don't know if I'm just not capturing enough sun, or I'm going to move it around and try it again. Maybe I got a bad one. I don't know. But for my listeners, just for a second, let's really break this down very elementary. And for me, because like I said, I'm ignorant on this. Explain to us, Mark, how these solar systems work. I mean, we all realize we're capturing the rays of the sun, right? And somehow that converts into energy to, I assume, power the house. So give us a real simplistic breakdown of exactly how that works, if you will.
It's magic. It's just
Okay.
I can give you the nerdy scientific version of how solar works. And I do this in the class that I teach. So the sun is shining, it emits what's called a photon. The photon hits the panels, and within the panels, which are made of silicon cells, when that reaction of the sun's photon hitting the cell happens, a molecule is released within the panel, and that molecule starts to move around within that panel very quickly. That's what creates the energy on the rooftop, or within the panel, wherever it might be. So typically on a rooftop. That rapid movement creates the energy. That energy is created in direct current. Buildings, homes, commercial buildings, we use alternating current. So there's a process involved where we convert what's happened on that panel from direct current into alternating current and send it into the building, into the home. And that's done through what's called an inverter. So we've got, perhaps your portable panel's got a problem with the inverter or something like that, but that's maybe why it's not working. But so the panel itself captures the energy from the sun naturally, and then it converts it through the inverter process, sends it into the home, and we use it in the home, and it's pretty much on demand. So the electricity is being harnessed when the sun is out. When the sun is not out, it's no longer producing. So that's when we go to battery storage, which is a new thing, or the excess energy gets sent back to your utility grid, and then you draw off of kind of like a excess account of kilowatt hours, like you would draw out of your bank account, the excess kilowatt hours.
So yeah, from my deer cam, I'm sure it's user error. I'm very confident of that. But so we're grabbing the energy the sun's producing. We're creating this energy on our rooftop. Anything that we're not using immediately certainly goes into a battery, or maybe back to the utility company, is what I'm hearing, to bank up and be used later. I guess that's what my brother was talking about when he said his meter might go backwards, right? Where he's so if it's a sunny day and we're capturing all that energy right now, is that what's being used kind of immediately to power our computers and our lights and hair dryers and all that good stuff?
Yes, like I said, solar is pretty much on demand. So if you're not in the building, if you're not in the house, and your system is producing kilowatt hours of electricity all day long, and you don't have battery storage, it is going back to the grid. And then you have an agreement with your utility, which is called a net metering agreement, where they will meter how much you use, how much you produce, and how much you send back. And in California right now, there's a big kerfuffle over it because they're changing net metering. So it's very equitable right now, where they will buy it back at retail and sell it back to you at retail. The new net metering system that's going to go into effect in a few months here would sell it to you back at retail, but it would buy it from you at a 75% reduced cost. This is promoting battery storage because you want to keep it on site and use it yourself when the sun goes down when you need it. This happened in Hawaii years and years ago. It changed the net metering. And I've been teaching a different solar course for years, and we've been teaching to Hawaii. An interesting thing happened. Depending on if you're grandfathered into the old net metering system or not, a property that can sell energy back at a higher rate through their solar production, you can extract out additional value on that property. So somebody who's grandfathered into the old net metering system, potentially their home would be worth more money.
Oh wow, that's interesting. Yeah, so it sounds like they're encouraging battery use because it's so what I'm hearing, I think, is what's gonna happen is I'll sell my excess energy to them for 75 cents, a 75-cent credit, let's say. But then when I buy it back or need to use it, I'm going to be paying them $1, right? So I'm in a negative situation, and that's the incentive for me to get my own battery. I'm going to call them battery packs, right? A big battery pack for my house and store that energy myself. Is that what I'm understanding you're saying?
Yes, and here the deal is more like they'll pay you 25 cents for the excess, and when you buy it back, it's $1. The problem is those battery storage systems are limited in their capacity, and they're very expensive. So the cost of one battery, you could put a lot of panels up on your roof for the same amount. So you kind of have to figure out where you're going to be with that mathematical equation.
Yeah, that's
overproduction is probably not a good thing starting, in the spring forward when the policy changes here. And I'm constantly on top of the policy. I mean, we're going to talk about some stuff about the Inflation Reduction Act and the $369 billion that are available for energy efficiency improvements. That's going to make solar come into places that you never thought it would exist. So it could be coming to a town near you, thanks to the rebates and incentives provided by the Inflation Reduction Act.
So with these rebates and incentives, they're really trying to encourage folks to utilize this technology. Is that what I'm hearing?
They're encouraging people to become more energy efficient. And the big news item is around electric vehicles, where you can get $7,500 back if you were to purchase an electric vehicle, a qualifying electric vehicle that meets a certain price criteria, and it has to be sourced or finished, or it has to be domestically produced to a certain extent. So that's what's part of this new bill also. So in California, electric vehicles are all over the place. Mm-hmm. And you're getting $7,500 potentially off of your federal tax burden, off of your tax return. And this is all part of the same act, the Inflation Reduction Act that came out. It was signed into law at the end of last year, and all of its policies are going into effect now and into the coming year. So we're going to see the upshot of all of this is people who are become aware of the incentives and rebates that are available around energy efficient items, not just solar. I'm talking about windows, insulation, heat pump water heaters, mini split heating and cooling systems. Appraisers need to become aware that these, first off, what they are, what they look like, and then what type of a benefit do they add. And it's really, I think we need to get our heads around the fact that if you can understand that a kilowatt hour has a value that's numerical, then you might be on your way to giving some contributory value.
Yeah. I just put a mini split system in one of my houses because I grew up in a house that was a story and a half, and upstairs as kids we were upstairs, and we froze or we were about to die of heat stroke in the summertime because Dad kept everything the way he wanted it on the first level, and we just had to deal with it on the second level. But I bought a house down the street, not too far from where I grew up, and it was just that system. It had ductwork up there, but it just insufficient, right? So I had a guy come over. He looked at it. We put two heads and one outside unit. Of course, a bigger outside unit to accommodate the two separate heads. But it's wonderful. I mean, you can thermostat control each one of those separately. So one's a bedroom, one's a little office. and it works great. In fact, our heat went out on a tenant, and they called us and we're like, oh my God, we're so sorry. We'll have the guy out there. He can't get there till tomorrow. We'll put you up in a hotel, whatever. There is mini splits upstairs. You can go upstairs. And he called back and he said, well, this is just air conditioning. We're like, no, it puts out heat too, and they got that thing going, Mark, and they said, we don't want to leave. We're comfortable up here. You got a fireplace downstairs and we're just going to stay. And we're like, oh my God. All right. But that's how efficient those things are. They work incredibly and they much easier than installing a traditional furnace with all the ductwork and all that. It worked amazing. Hey, I want to talk real quick about what the solar panels look like today. I mean, when I was a little kid, this is a long time ago, but when I was a little kid, we had one house in our entire city that had solar panels. And they were great, big monster panels on the front of this house's roof. And, we all called it the solar panel house. And people would drive by just to see this thing, And it was, they weren't real pretty. I mean, it wasn't good looking at all. I'll just be honest with you. They are not there anymore. That house doesn't have them. And I still see great big panels. We've got a church out on Highway 56, and they have panels all next to it. It's incredible, like a field of panels. But let's talk about what options do you have as a property owner if you want to put them on a roof. What do they look like? Do they have to be these great big things that we used to see in the 70s and early 80s? Or what do the solar panels of today look like?
I remember you telling me about that one house that was like the attraction in town to see that. To be honest with you, they haven't changed that much. They are still large. And you see homes that plaster them all over the every bit of roof space that they have, and people would say to me, oh, that front facing solar, it's really unattractive. It's not pretty. And it's kind of mean to say, but it's like the person in the house was looking at a $500 electric bill, and now they've got this ugly looking front house. What's uglier to you? $500 electric bill or those panels on the front of your house that you don't really see, just all your neighbors are. So it's kind of a selfish thing, but the reason why people put solar panels on the front of their house is because that's the side of the house where the sun shines. Right. So our house, you could tell behind me, the sun's blaring in behind me. It hits in the afternoon. So the panels are still similar size, but technology has come a long way, and we now have roofing material that's photovoltaic. There's manufacturers out there that create roof tiles that have capability of the photovoltaic capabilities, so they are producing energy, and then they don't look as unattractive as the ones that we're talking about. It looks like a roof, and it's a lot more expensive, and probably 40-50% of your rooftop might be photovoltaic, and the rest of it is just matching tile. It's very expensive at this point. And there's a few manufacturers, one of the big names out there in this industry is Tesla, and they've had a solar tile roof for years, but there's others, many others out there. And the battery production, they're the big player on the battery storage too, because theirs holds 14 kilowatt hours of energy, and some of the others, GE and Panasonic and stuff, they have them also for home storage, but they're not as large.
So, and we don't have a lot of time left in this podcast, and I'd love to have you back on a webinar. And we're going to talk about your course in a minute, because people can get lots of information if they want more information on solar. But just real quickly, is it a big challenge? I mean, let's say I'm the appraiser. I go out to the property, there's solar panels. And I'm like, please be leased, please be leased. and they say, yeah, please, dear God, be leased. And they're like, nope, I'm a proud owner of these suckers, right? And I'm like, oh God, right? I'm going to encourage people to take your class. I'm going to take your class, and then I'll know the answer. But in a short mini version, How do I solve that valuation problem? I mean, is there pairing of data? Is there depreciated costs? I mean, how do I figure out if these contribute, and to what degree do they contribute to the value of the whole?
Well, you just said it right there. We have three approaches to value, and I'm going to show you all three of them and how they operate. Depreciated cost is one way to do it. In California and in other areas, Arizona, where there's a large proliferation of solar and it's been adopted and accepted by the market. Yeah, we have matched pairs. Now, in the past, it was very difficult to find, and the MLS reporting was not as robust maybe as it is now, and they wouldn't say if it was owned or leased, and so it was just a struggles. But when I mentioned valuing the kilowatt hour, that's where we go into the income approach. And so at the end of the day, we come up with three different numbers if we have the data, where we could say depreciated cost. I can show people the resources where to find out how much these things cost and what their economic life would be.
Okay.
And we just do a straight depreciated cost analysis on it that way. And then the match paired analysis obviously is the best way. And the income approach will show you via a discounted cash flow we're going to make it more simple than it sounds, because that's a little obscure for residential appraisers. But at the end of the day, Fannie Mae says your adjustments must be based in the market. So we really have to delve into market acceptance when there's a lack of market data to make the match paired or the group paired analysis. And it is difficult, and it is a long way to go for one adjustment.
Yeah. Can't I just call you and say, Mark, what's the adjustment? I'll put it down. Maybe I
had a realtor ask me on the phone the other day while I was presenting to a large group on Wednesday, and we started to talk about solar. So what's it worth? And I said, well, since we're in closed company here, let me tell you, it's X amount of dollars per watt generally. But here's what I have to tell realtors. If you have two homes that are exactly the same in every single which way, one has solar, one doesn't, and you sell them both for the same amount, the appraiser's mind says that amenity, solar, did not add any value. So, realtors, if you have a home with solar on it, please sell it for more money than the ones that don't.
Help us with some comps here, please. I love it. All right, Mark, before I let you go, let's talk about your class, right? You've been teaching a class for a long, long time. You've got a brand new class with Appraiser eLearning, which we're super excited about. So I'm going to show folks a screenshot as to how they can get information relative to signing up for your upcoming class. But tell my listeners and viewers what they're going to get out of taking this class.
Well, when I told one of my friends, yeah, I'm doing a 7-hour solar class, they're like, 7 hours of solar? Oh my God, what are you going to talk about? I'm like, you know me, I can talk about this stuff for 20 hours, but we're just going to touch on the basics. What is a solar array made out of? Really, what are you looking for when you go to the house? What's a good, when you're doing your on-site observation, what to look for and the questions to ask. And I'm going to go through the Fannie Mae guidelines. When do we consider giving contributory value to solar, and when do we not? So there's going to be good news there, because a lot of times we don't have to. And I just had mentioned market acceptance. We really need to see, does the market accept this amenity? Maybe it does, but we're not seeing a lot of data out there around closed sales, because people who put this on their roof typically don't sell it immediately. They're going to be in there for a while. We're going to go over the three approaches to value that I just mentioned, touch on some case studies, and then I always like to get into the policy and really, what are the powers that be that we work for? What do they say about this? What's Fannie say? What's Freddie say? FHFA, all of them. What's their take on this? And I'm really stoked to be a part of Appraiser eLearning now, because I did a different course, a shorter one on my own for years, and there's a lot to it. I mean, stoked is a California word. For the rest of you, that means I'm excited. So
very good.
It's great to be part of the team because I don't have to issue CE certificates or send out emails and promote the course and all that. So I'm
Yeah,
happy to
we've
be a
got
part of
listen,
Appraiser eLearning.
we've got a great team that handles all of that between Ben and Doug and Diana and Kim and Hal and Jim, and I mean we just got a great team. So let me just share the website real quick. So this is appraiserelearning.com, the website. This is what you're going to find if you just go to appraiserelearning.com. And what you're going to do for Mark's course that we've been talking about today is go up here to the live Zoom CE tab. You can click on that, I believe. Let's see. Click on that, and look, he's the first one coming up here. So, how to appraise solar panels, and it's a 7-hour CE class. So not only do you get the great information, you will get 7 hours of CE, and it's already approved in multiple states, with many more states coming. It looks like you've got a February 6th and 7th, so from 10 a.m. to 1:30 Central Standard Time. So what you've done, Mark, is what I do a lot, is to break up the 7 hours over 2 days, and it seems like a lot of our students like that. You don't have to look at a screen for 7 hours. You get 3.5 hours the first day, 3.5 hours the next. I mean, you got to be there for both days to get the credit. March 21st and 22nd, it's coming up again, and then finally in April. So right now we have 3 chances on the calendar. February 6th and 7th is the first, March 21st and 22nd, and finally April 19th and 20th. We recommend that you sign up immediately for that February 6th and 7th. I don't know if there'll be a cutoff or not, but there might be if we have so many registrants. So be sure you jump over to appraiserelearning.com, click on the live Zoom CE. I'm saying this for all my listeners. This is really a podcast. And then you can see the tab there, how to appraise solar panels. Mark, thank you so much for being here today. If one of my listeners or viewers wants to reach out to you directly, is there an email or something that somebody could send you a quick email and chat with you?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you for having me, Bryan. My email address is mark, M-A-R-K, at CMP, like Charles, Mary, Paul, appraisal.com. Mark at cmpappraisal.com.
Thanks again, Mark. We really appreciate you being here. I know you're a busy guy, so thanks again for being here.
Thank you, Bryan.
Ladies and gentlemen, you've been watching and listening to the Appraisal Update podcast. We hope you're doing well. If you would like to be a guest on the program, or you know someone that you think would be a great, fantastic, exciting guest like Mark, full of information, reach out to me, Bryan at appraiserelearning.com. That's Bryan with a Y. Bryan, Bryan at appraiserelearning.com, and we'll try and get you on the program. Until next time, stay safe. Try and learn a new skill. Shake the trees. Get out there and make some new clients. We've got a meeting on Monday with some folks that we're doing a little lecture, a little meet and greet, giving them some information, and hopefully it'll result in a little business. Please stay safe. For Mark Buhler, I'm your host, Bryan Reynolds. Until next time, happy appraising.
The Appraisal Update podcast is brought to you by Appraiser eLearning.